The communication panel beeped 3 times before Administrator Telvin noticed it. His 4 arms moved across different screens, while his eyes tracked resource allocations for the outer sectors. The Galactic Council station hummed with its usual activity, thousands of species working together to maintain peace across known space. The beeping continued. Telvin finally glanced at the distress monitor. A red indicator pulsed in the corner of his screen. He tapped it with one claw and data flooded across his display. An automated distress beacon had activated somewhere in the outer fringe, that lawless stretch of space where pirates hid between jumps. Telvin pulled up the signal details. The transmission was corrupted, fragments of data mixed with static from the nearby Crimson Nebula. He could make out basic information: civilian transport, disabled engines, hull breach forming, 17 passengers aboard. The vessel registry showed through the interference as Class II peaceful civilization. Standard protocol was clear. Civilian vessel in distress, non-military classification, send the appropriate rescue team. Telvin dispatched Council Rescue Frigate Mercy Light with 3 security escorts. Light armament, diplomatic crew, exactly what peaceful civilians would need. What Telvin did not see was the corruption in the data stream. The nebula radiation had scrambled critical information. The actual classification read Class 12 Deathworld origin, but those characters appeared on his screen as Class 2. The vessel registry showed Terran, but the letters twisted into something resembling Telvanni, a minor peaceful species from the inner sectors. Telvin confirmed the dispatch and returned to his resource reports. The rescue would reach the disabled ship in approximately 3 hours. Routine operation, nothing unusual. 50,000 kilometers away, pirate sensors picked up the same distress call. Captain Grivek lounged in his command chair, his scaled hide reflecting the dim lights of his converted cargo hauler. 7 ships under his command, all armed with weapons stripped from derelict military vessels. He ruled this section of the fringe through violence and fear. His communications officer played the intercepted transmission. Grivek listened to the garbled message, his eyes narrowing with interest. Disabled civilian ship, 17 passengers, minimal defenses. Then his officer intercepted the Council dispatch. 1 rescue frigate with light security escort. Grivek smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Easy prey. Raid the civilian transport, take their cargo and ransom the passengers, then ambush the Council rescue ship for its valuable medical supplies. 2 targets, 1 operation. He ordered his fleet to jump immediately. The transport ship Prairie Wind drifted silent against the backdrop of distant stars. Inside, the passengers moved through the corridors with purpose. The ship had struck an asteroid cluster during their jump, and the collision had sheared off their primary engine mounting. They were stuck until repairs could be completed or help arrived. Bate checked the engine compartment for the 3rd time. Her hands moved efficiently across the damaged systems, decades of training guiding her actions. She had served 20 years in the Terran Marine Corps before retiring to try farming on New Edmonton. Most of the other passengers shared similar backgrounds. Her husband Roy worked beside her, his quiet competence unchanged from their service days. They had sent the distress call 4 hours ago using the automated beacon. Standard procedure. Someone would respond eventually. Dr. Lin walked through the passenger area, checking on the families. She carried a medical scanner, though no one was seriously injured. The elderly couple, Grace and Robert, sat calmly reviewing their seed catalogs for the farm they planned to start. Grace had been a Navy corpsman for 2 decades. Robert had served in logistics. They knew how to wait without panicking. Patrick, a young father, kept his 2 children occupied with educational games on his datapad. He had been an artillery specialist before deciding he wanted his kids to grow up away from military life. His wife Sarah helped Bate with the engine repairs, her engineering background from the Navy proving useful. The ship held 17 people total. 14 of them were military veterans. They had chosen peaceful lives, but they remembered their training. Bate received an alert from the sensor array. 7 ships dropping out of jump space, surrounding them in combat formation. She studied the signatures. Converted civilian vessels, mismatched weapons, typical pirate configuration. She walked calmly to the communication station. The incoming transmission crackled with Grivak's voice. He spoke in broken universal common, making demands. Surrender immediately. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance would mean death for everyone aboard. Bate listened without expression. She glanced at Roy, who had moved to stand beside her. They shared a look that contained years of shared experience. She opened the return channel. "You sure you want to do this?" Her voice was calm, almost conversational. Grivak's laughter echoed through the speaker. He gave them 60 seconds to comply, or he would breach their hull and take what he wanted from the wreckage. Bate turned to face the other passengers. "All right, folks, Protocol 7, you know the drill." The transformation was quiet and efficient. Robert opened a concealed panel in the cargo hold, revealing a weapons locker. Every Terran frontier ship carried them, standard precaution for traveling through dangerous space. Dr. Lin picked up a pulse rifle, checked the charge indicator, and moved to a defensive position near the main corridor. Roy suited up in what appeared to be maintenance gear, but included reinforced plating at vital points. Grace distributed ammunition while keeping one eye on the children, making sure they were secured in the reinforced safe room designed for exactly this situation. Patrick rigged the cargo bay with improvised explosives using engine components and fuel cells. His hands moved with the practiced ease of someone who had done this type of work many times before. Bate opened a secondary communication panel, one running on military encryption frequencies. She broadcast on the Terran emergency channel that every defense vessel monitored continuously. "This is Prairie Wind, Terran civilian transport under pirate attack. 17 souls aboard. We are holding position and awaiting support." The message went out into space, traveling faster than light through the quantum communication network. Somewhere, someone was listening. Someone would respond. The Terrans always responded when their people called for help. Bate watched the countdown timer on Grivak's ultimatum. 40 seconds remaining. She picked up her own weapon, a mining plasma cutter that had been modified for a different purpose. The other colonists took their positions without drama or heroics, just quiet preparation. They were farmers now, heading to a new world to build peaceful lives. But today they were something else, something that came naturally to every human who had ever lived on Earth. They were people protecting their community, and they would hold until help arrived. The timer reached 0. 3 parsecs away, the bridge of TDF destroyer Steadfast operated with controlled intensity. Commander Walsh reviewed patrol reports when the emergency channel activated with Bates' transmission. Every head on the bridge turned toward the communication station. The officer repeated the message aloud. "Terran civilian transport under attack. 17 people." Walsh did not hesitate. "All ships combat speed. Authorization Sierra 7. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Shepherd 4 patrol group consisted of 4 vessels. The destroyer Steadfast served as the command ship. 2 frigates, Vigilant and Resolute, provided fast attack capability. The assault carrier Guardian carried 200 Marines specifically trained for hostile boarding operations. Walsh opened the fleet-wide channel. "Listen carefully. These are not military personnel under attack. These are farmers, doctors, people going to plant crops and raise families. I want those pirates captured if possible, but our people come home safe. That is the only mission parameter that matters." The crew worked in silence, calculating jump coordinates and preparing weapons. No one questioned the response. This was what they did. This was why Shepherd patrols existed. Estimated arrival time, 42 minutes. Back at the Galactic Council station, a junior analyst named Prella sat at her workstation reviewing automated reports. She had flagged the distress call from earlier, running recovery algorithms to clean up the corrupted data. The results made her mandibles click nervously. The clean data showed completely different information. Not Class 2, Class 12 Deathworld origin, not Telvanni registry, Terran. The words appeared clearly on her screen once the nebula interference was removed. She tried to contact Administrator Telvin immediately, but he was in a council meeting with senior representatives. She left urgent messages, flagged the file as critical priority, and sent alerts to his personal communicator. Nothing worked. Meetings with council representatives required complete attention. Prella watched the timeline. The council rescue frigate Mercy Light was already halfway to the distress coordinates. She had no authority to recall the mission. She could only wait and hope Telvin checked his messages soon. Captain Yenith commanded the Mercy Light with gentle efficiency. His species, the Porthesians, believed strongly in helping others. He had rehearsed his first contact protocols during the journey, preparing to comfort frightened civilians and coordinate their rescue. His security chief, a cautious Rendali named Quart, reviewed the tactical situation. "Captain, this region has significant pirate activity. We should proceed with weapons ready." Yenith waved one feathered hand dismissively. "We are a council vessel, Quart. They would not dare attack us. The council's authority protects those who serve peace." Quart said nothing more but kept the security escorts in close formation. Something felt wrong about this situation, though he could not identify what. The Mercy Light dropped out of jump space at the distress coordinates. Yenith's pleasant expression vanished instantly. 7 armed vessels surrounded a damaged transport ship. Weapons fire had already scarred the transport's hull. This was no simple rescue. He opened general communication channels. "This is Galactic Council vessel Mercy Light. You are violating Code 47 by attacking a civilian vessel. Withdraw immediately or face council sanctions." Grivak's response came through with mocking laughter. "The council has no power in the fringe. Your sanctions mean nothing here. Leave or join them." Yenith tried reason, diplomacy, appeals to law and morality. Grivak ordered 2 of his ships to engage the council vessels. The rest maintained position around the Prairie Wind, preparing for boarding operations. The council's security escorts returned fire, but they carried light weapons designed for patrol duties, not combat. The pirate ships, crude as they were, mounted heavier guns. The battle went poorly from the start. Inside the Prairie Wind, Bate watched the new arrivals on her passive sensors. Roy reported quietly, "Council ship, light frigate class, they are trying to negotiate." Bate shook her head. They do not understand what they walked into. The pirate boarding parties reached the Prairie Wind's airlocks. Magnetic clamps attached with heavy thuds. Cutting torches began working through the outer doors. Bate gave quiet orders through her headset. "Let them start breaching. We hold interior advantage. Remember your training. Controlled fire, protect the safe room, wait for support." The colonists moved into position. Grace set up a triage station in the reinforced galley, medical supplies laid out with military precision. Patrick watched his improvised explosives, waiting for the right moment. Dr. Lin covered the main corridor with 2 others, their rifles aimed at the airlock. The first airlock door gave way. Pirates poured through, expecting frightened civilians. Patrick triggered the cargo bay charges. The explosion tore through the boarding party, sending survivors stumbling back through the breached airlock in confusion and pain. Grivak received the report over his communication channel. His confidence wavered. "What do you mean they are armed? They are civilians." His tactical officer studied the sensor data. "Captain, the transport is running a very hot reactor for a disabled ship. power levels are inconsistent with the damage they should have sustained. Grivak growled in frustration. He ordered all ships to open fire, intending to disable the transport completely and force surrender. Before he could give the final command, his sensor operator shouted in alarm. Jump signatures, multiple contacts emerging. Space rippled and tore. 4 Terran warships dropped out of FTL in perfect combat formation. The destroyer positioned itself directly between the pirates and the prairie wind. The frigates swept wide, cutting off escape vectors. The assault carrier launched dropships toward the damaged transport. Commander Walsh's voice filled every communication channel, cold and absolute. This is Terran Defense Fleet Destroyer Steadfast. All hostile vessels, power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. Grivak stared at his tactical display. The intelligence officer stammered beside him, pulling up ship classifications and threat assessments. Captain, those are Deathworlders, Terrans. The transport was Terran. The color drained from Grivak's face as he understood the magnitude of his mistake. He had attacked Terran civilians. He had triggered the response of a Deathworlder military fleet. Walsh did not wait for surrender, weapons free. The Terran ships opened fire. The engagement lasted 90 seconds. That was all the time the Terran warships needed to eliminate the pirate threat. Frigate Vigilant fired first, its railgun accelerating a tungsten rod to a fraction of light speed. The projectile punched through a pirate vessel's engine section, detonating the reactor. The ship went dark, venting atmosphere and spinning slowly in the void. Frigate Resolute targeted 2 pirates attempting to flee. Precision laser strikes disabled their maneuvering thrusters. Both ships tumbled helplessly, unable to control their trajectory. The destroyer Steadfast advanced on Grivak's flagship. Point defense systems intercepted the desperate weapons fire from the pirate ship. The Terran weapons, designed to crack hardened military targets, treated the converted civilian hull like thin metal sheeting. 3 shots removed the weapon batteries. A 4th destroyed the jump drive. The remaining pirate vessels ceased fire and began broadcasting surrender on all frequencies. Commander Walsh ordered weapons hold but kept targeting solutions active. Inside the prairie wind, Bait monitored the battle through her sensors. The entire engagement unfolded with brutal efficiency. No wasted shots, no hesitation, just professional violence applied with surgical precision. Her headset crackled with a new voice, calm and reassuring. Prairie Wind, this is Marine Captain Akoy, TDF Guardian. We are coming to get you. Sit tight. Bait allowed herself a small smile. Good to hear from you, Marines. We have wounded, but the situation is stable. Pirates still attached to airlocks 2 and 5. Copy that, we will handle them. Stay clear of external bulkheads. The colonists watched through viewports as Marine assault pods launched from the carrier Guardian. The pods moved with purpose, magnetic grapples latching onto the pirate ships still clamped to the Prairie Wind's hull. Breaching charges detonated. Marines poured through the openings in armored pressure suits, weapons ready. The pirates inside those ships had nowhere to run. The Marines swept through the vessels with overwhelming force, clearing each compartment in seconds. Bait heard the impacts through the hull as the Marines worked. No battle cries, no dramatic pronouncements, just efficient room clearing by professionals who had done this 1,000 times. Within 4 minutes, the attached pirate vessels were secured. Marine engineers began carefully detaching them from the Prairie Wind to prevent further hull damage. Captain Akoy entered through airlock 3, her Marines following in disciplined formation. She found Bait standing calmly near the command console, still holding the modified plasma cutter. Akoy gave a simple salute, "Ma'am." Bait returned it, "Captain, appreciate the timely arrival." Akoy surveyed the interior. The colonists had maintained defensive positions throughout the engagement, protecting the safe room and covering all approaches. Medical supplies were organized in the galley. Weapons were held with proper discipline. She recognized military veterans when she saw them. "Your people did good work here," Akoy said. "We remembered our training," Bate replied. Marine medics moved through the ship, assessing injuries. Roy had a fractured arm from explosive decompression when the hull breached. Dr. Lin showed minor burns from plasma fire, but had already treated 3 other colonists. Grace had worked triage efficiently, stabilizing everyone before the Marines arrived. Outside, Commander Walsh dealt with the surviving pirates. Grivek and his crews abandoned their ships in escape pods. Knowing the alternative was death when the Terran weapons finished their work, Walsh ordered the pods collected and the crews placed in the Steadfast's brig. The Council frigate Mercy Light drifted nearby, damaged but intact. Its shields had held against the pirate weapons, though just barely. Captain Yenith stood on his bridge in stunned silence, watching the Terran ships methodically dismantle a pirate fleet that had completely outmatched his forces. Walsh opened a channel to the Mercy Light. "Council vessel, this is Commander Walsh. Do you require assistance?" Yenith found his voice after a moment. "We are damaged but functional. Thank you for your intervention, Commander. I did not expect such a rapid response." Terran civilians sent a distress call. "We respond." Walsh's tone suggested this was the most natural thing in the galaxy. "I see." Yenith paused. "Commander, I must confess the Council dispatched us believing this was a Class II peaceful civilization vessel. The distress signal was corrupted. We did not know they were Terran." Walsh considered this information. "That explains the light security escort. Captain, you should know that any Terran civilian vessel automatically triggers military response if they send distress calls. We protect our people, even though they are not military personnel. Especially because they are not military personnel. They left service to build peaceful lives. We make sure they can live those lives safely." Yenith absorbed this cultural information. In Council space, civilian vessels relied on civilian rescue services. Military forces responded only to military threats. The Terran approach was completely different. Walsh continued, "I am boarding the Prairie Wind to assess the situation. You are welcome to join me if your ship is stable." Yenith agreed immediately. He needed to understand what had happened here. The 2 captains met aboard the damaged transport. Walsh found the colonists organized and calm, treating the entire incident like a training exercise that had unfortunately gone live. Bate briefed him on their status while Roy supervised repairs with Marine engineers. Yenith watched in fascination. These people showed no panic, no trauma from the attack. They moved with purpose and competence, already planning how to complete their journey once repairs were finished. He approached Bate cautiously. "I must apologize. The Council should have sent stronger support. We believed you were peaceful civilians." Bate looked at him with a slight smile. "We are peaceful civilians, Captain. We are going to New Edmonton to farm, plant crops, raise livestock, build a community." "But you fought like soldiers." "We remembered our training," Bate said simply. "Most of us served in Terran military before retiring. We chose peaceful lives, but we do not forget how to protect ourselves and each other. That is what humans do." Yenith's feathers ruffled in confusion. The contradiction made no sense to him. Warriors who wanted to farm, soldiers who desired peace, veterans who could switch between defending their lives and planning crop rotations. Commander Walsh understood his confusion. "Captain Yenith, you need to understand something about Terrans. We come from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us. Every generation learned one lesson above all others: work together or die alone. When someone needs help, you help them. When someone threatens your people, you stop them. These 2 ideas are not contradictory to us." Yenith looked around the Prairie Wind at the colonists continuing their work. He was beginning to understand why the galaxy classified Earth as a Class 12 death world. Back at Galactic Council headquarters, Administrator Telvin finally emerged from his meeting. He found 73 urgent messages waiting on his personal communicator, all from Junior Analyst Prella, all marked critical priority. His good mood from a successful council negotiation evaporated when he read the first message. Corrupted distress signal, classification error, Terran civilian vessel, Class 12 Deathworld origin. He pulled up the timeline. The Mercy Light had reached the coordinates 30 minutes ago. He opened communication channels frantically, trying to reach Captain Yeneth. The channel connected after a tense moment. Captain Yeneth, report your status immediately. Yeneth's voice came through, surprisingly calm. Administrator, we are safe. The Terran Defense Fleet arrived and resolved the situation. The civilian transport is secure. Telvin felt his three hearts slow their racing. What happened? The distress call was from a Terran civilian vessel under pirate attack. The corruption in the signal made it appear as Class 2 peaceful civilization. 7 pirate vessels had surrounded them when I arrived. I attempted diplomatic resolution, but the pirates engaged us. We were losing the battle when 4 Terran warships emerged from FTL and eliminated the pirate threat in approximately 90 seconds. Telvin sat down heavily. Were there casualties? Minor injuries among the Terran civilians. They defended themselves successfully until military support arrived. Administrator, these were farmers and doctors. Veterans, yes, but they had retired from service. They fought off pirate boarding parties while waiting for rescue. And our vessel? Damaged but functional. The Terrans protected us once they arrived. Commander Walsh has been very professional. Telvin processed this information. A council rescue operation had nearly resulted in disaster because of a corrupted signal. Only the Terran military response had prevented a complete catastrophe. He made immediate decisions. Captain Yeneth, coordinate with the Terran commander. Provide any assistance the civilian vessel requires. I am initiating emergency protocol updates for all Terran civilian classifications. This will not happen again. He disconnected and called an emergency council session. This incident needed immediate attention. 3 days later, the Prairie Wind sat in space dock at Terran Station Harmony, undergoing full repairs. The colonists remained aboard because sitting idle was not in their nature. They helped the repair crews, offering suggestions based on their own experience with similar systems. Commander Walsh filed his after-action report in the station's military offices. The report was thorough and precise. 0 civilian casualties. Civilian vessel successfully defended position for 47 minutes against superior hostile force. Terran military response time, 42 minutes from distress call to engagement. Pirate fleet neutralized with minimal collateral damage. Recommended commendation for Prairie Wind passengers for exceptional composure under hostile action. The surviving pirates faced Terran military justice. Grivak stood in the courtroom, his scales looking dull under the harsh lights. The charges were read: piracy, attempted murder, assault on Terran civilians, violation of rescue beacon protocols. Judge Collins presided, her expression stern and unforgiving. She reviewed the evidence, which was overwhelming. Sensor logs, communication intercepts, testimony from the Prairie Wind passengers, the Council frigate's tactical recordings. Grivak tried to defend himself. We did not know they were Deathworlders. The signal said peaceful civilians, if we had known. Judge Collins interrupted him. You knew they were people sending a distress call. You knew they needed help. You chose to attack them instead. The fact that they were Terran is irrelevant to the moral calculation. You are a predator who targeted the vulnerable. The sentence is complete asset forfeiture, permanent ship impound, and 20 years labor service on frontier colony worlds. You will spend those years building instead of destroying. Dismissed. Grivak was led away. His ships would be broken down for parts. His crew would serve similar sentences. The message was clear. Attacking civilians, any civilians, brought severe consequences. At Galactic Council headquarters, Administrator Telvin presented his new protocols to the full council chamber. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the massive room, their various forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. Telvin displayed the incident data on the central hologram, the corrupted signal, the classification error, the near disaster that followed. A Quillaran representative raised one claw. Administrator, why did the Terrans respond with military warships to a civilian distress call? This seems like excessive force deployment. Telvin had anticipated this question. He displayed the Terran response protocols. The Terran Defense Fleet maintains dedicated patrol groups called Shepherds specifically to protect civilian vessels. Any distress call from Terran civilians triggers immediate military response, regardless of the apparent threat level. They treat protection of civilians as a primary military function. Another representative, a floating gas entity from the Nebular Collective, pulsed with curiosity. But these civilians were capable of defending themselves. The report shows they held off the pirates effectively. Why send military forces at all? Telvin showed footage from the Steadfast combat recorder. The cold efficiency of the engagement. The overwhelming force applied without hesitation. The Marines boarding the prairie wind with professional precision. The chamber fell silent as they watched. Telvin continued. The Terrans explained their philosophy to Captain Yeneth. They protect their civilians not because those civilians are helpless, but because they believe it is their duty. The phrase Commander Walsh used was, "We served so they could live in peace. Now we make sure they can." It is a cultural imperative that runs very deep in their society. A wise old Porthesian elder spoke from his position near the back. They are shepherds indeed, protecting the flock even though the flock has teeth of its own. Telvin nodded. Exactly, and we nearly sent inadequate support because our systems could not properly identify a Terran vessel. I am proposing immediate updates to our communication protocols. All Terran civilian vessels will be clearly marked with Deathworld origin classification. All distress calls from such vessels will automatically trigger alerts for appropriate response teams. We cannot afford another incident like this. The Council voted unanimously to approve the new protocols. The changes would be implemented across all Council space within 10 standard cycles. Junior analyst Prella watched the vote from her workstation. Her quick recognition of the error had been noted. She received a commendation and a promotion to senior analyst. Her new assignment, overseeing communication protocol updates for Deathworld origin vessels. She accepted the responsibility seriously. Next time a Terran sent a distress call, everyone would know exactly what they were dealing with. 6 days after the incident, the Prairie Wind completed repairs and prepared for departure. The Terran engineers had done excellent work, reinforcing the damaged sections and upgrading several systems as a courtesy. Commander Walsh visited one final time before the colonists resumed their journey. He found Bait in the cargo hold, supervising the reload of their farming equipment. Seeds, tools, livestock embryos in cryo-storage, everything needed to start a new agricultural settlement. Roy worked beside her, his fractured arm now in a proper medical brace. Commander, Bait acknowledged him with a nod. Come to see us off. Walsh smiled slightly. Wanted to make sure you were ready. New Edmonton is still frontier territory, could be more trouble ahead. We know, that is why most of us are veterans. Peaceful lives do not mean safe lives, not out on the edge of explored space. Walsh watched the other colonists working. Grace checked medical supplies while discussing grain varieties with Dr. Lin. Patrick taught his children basic emergency procedures, while his wife Sarah calibrated the navigation systems. Everyone moved with purpose and competence. Can I ask you something, Bate? Walsh kept his voice low. Why did you leave the service? You are clearly still connected to it. Bates set down the crate she was carrying and looked at him directly. Because, Commander, I served for 20 years so people could live in peace. I protected trade routes. I fought pirates. I stood watch while civilians slept safely. Eventually, I realized I wanted to be one of those civilians living that peaceful life I was protecting. She gestured around the cargo hold at the farming equipment. I want to plant crops and watch them grow. I want to raise livestock and see them thrive. I want to build a community with my neighbors where the hardest decision is what to plant in the spring. I earned that life, and so did everyone else on this ship. But you will never forget how to fight. No, we are human. We remember everything our ancestors learned about survival, but we choose when to use that knowledge. Today we fought because we had no choice. Tomorrow we go back to being farmers. That is not a contradiction, Commander. That is just being human. Walsh extended his hand. Bate shook it firmly, warrior to warrior, both understanding what the other had sacrificed and chosen. The Prairie Wind received clearance to depart 3 hours later. The ship lifted smoothly from the dock, its repaired engines running perfectly. The colonists strapped in for the jump to FTL, ready to complete the journey they had started weeks ago. As they entered jump space, Bate looked around at her fellow passengers. Grace was already reviewing seed catalogs, planning crop rotations. Patrick was teaching his kids basic mathematics using farming examples. Roy was reading a book about sustainable livestock management in low-gravity environments. They were going home. Not to Earth, but to New Edmonton, the place they would build into home through their own work and determination. The news of the incident spread through galactic communication networks. Terran civilian transport successfully defends against pirate attack. Terran military responds within an hour. Pirate fleet destroyed. The story carried different lessons for different species. Some saw it as proof that Deathworlders were inherently violent, unable to separate from their warrior nature even in civilian life. These species maintained their distance from human settlements, viewing them as potential threats. Others recognized the deeper truth. Humans valued peace precisely because they understood the cost of violence. They trained for war so they could live in peace. They remembered how to fight so they could choose not to fight. This paradox made them both dangerous and trustworthy in ways that confused many species. The Council distributed the updated protocols. Every Terran civilian vessel now carried enhanced identification markers. Communication systems automatically flagged distress calls from Deathworld origin ships. Response teams received briefings on appropriate support levels. The protocols included a specific note: Terran civilians may possess military training and capability. This does not indicate hostile intent. Approach rescue situations with full understanding that self-defense actions may already be in progress. Coordinate with Terran Defense Fleet for optimal response. Captain Yenith received the updated protocols at his personal terminal. He read them carefully, thinking about his experience with the Prairie Wind. The Terrans had been polite, professional, and grateful for Council assistance. They had also been absolutely capable of defending themselves until proper support arrived. He updated his own rescue procedures, adding notes from his direct experience. Future Council rescue operations would benefit from the lessons learned. He felt grateful that everyone had survived to learn those lessons. Junior Analyst Prella, now Senior Analyst Prella, worked with communication teams across Council space. She ensured the new identification systems were implemented correctly. Every station, every relay, every monitoring post now had the tools to properly identify Terran vessels and respond appropriately. She thought about Administrator Telvin's words during her promotion ceremony. You prevented a disaster by recognizing the error and reporting it immediately. That is the definition of excellence in our work. Prella took her new responsibilities seriously. Terran civilians deserved proper protection when they called for help. Council forces deserved accurate information to provide that protection. Her work would ensure both happened correctly. 3 weeks later, the Prairie Wind dropped out of FTL in orbit around New Edmonton. The planet rotated below them, a beautiful mix of blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds, exactly the kind of world they had hoped to find. The colonists looked through viewports at their new home: rich soil, plentiful water, temperate climate, room to build and grow and live the peaceful lives they had earned through decades of service. Bates stood beside Roy, both of them looking down at the planet's surface. Somewhere down there was their plot of land, their future farm, their community. "Ready?" Roy asked quietly. Bates smiled. "More than ready, let us go plant some crops." The Prairie Wind descended through the atmosphere, carrying 17 people who had defended their lives with warrior skill and now intended to live those lives with peaceful purpose. They had proven that humans could be both. They would continue proving it every day on New Edmonton. The ship landed gently in the settlement zone. The colonists gathered their belongings and stepped out onto the soil of their new world. Grace knelt and ran her fingers through the dirt, nodding with satisfaction. Patrick's children ran through the grass, laughing with joy. Bate and Roy stood together, looking at the land stretching before them. Tomorrow they would start building. Today they would rest and give thanks for arriving safely. The galaxy was learning what humans had always known. Peace was not weakness. Strength was not the same as violence. And the most dangerous warriors were often those who wanted nothing more than to put down their weapons and plant gardens. 1 year later, the settlement on New Edmonton thrived. 70 families now called the planet home, with more arriving every few months. The original 17 colonists from the Prairie Wind had become community leaders, their experience and competence making them natural guides for newcomers. Bate walked through fields of golden wheat, checking the crop health. The grain grew strong in New Edmonton's rich soil, better than projections had suggested. Roy worked on irrigation systems in the distance, his engineering skills applied to peaceful purposes. Their farm produced food for the growing settlement and seed stock for future planting. Grace ran the community medical clinic, training younger doctors in frontier medicine. Patrick taught children in the settlement school, his kids now helping other families adapt to their new home. Dr. Lin managed the agricultural research station, developing crop varieties suited to local conditions. The settlement had faced challenges: equipment failures, unexpected weather patterns, supply delays from off-world shipments, but no pirates, no violence, no attacks. The Terran Defense Fleet maintained regular patrols through the system, and word had spread through the criminal networks. Terran colonies were not profitable targets. On this particular morning, Bate received a communication from orbit. A Council diplomatic vessel requested permission to land. She granted it immediately, curious about the visit. The shuttle touched down near the main settlement hub. Ambassador Yentris, a senior Quillaran diplomat, emerged with a small delegation. Bate met them at the landing pad, joined by Roy and several other community leaders. Yentris offered the traditional Quillaran greeting, all 4 arms extended. Bate returned the gesture respectfully. "Welcome to New Edmonton, Ambassador. What brings the Council to our settlement?" Yentris gestured to his aide, who produced a data pad. "We are conducting research on successful frontier settlements. New Edmonton has shown remarkable growth and stability in its first year. The Council hopes to understand your success and share those lessons with other developing colonies." Bates smiled. "We work hard and help each other, not much more complicated than that. Perhaps you could show us around. We would appreciate seeing your operations." The tour lasted 3 hours. Yentris and his delegation observed the farms, the school, the medical clinic, the workshops, and repair facilities. They noted the efficient layout, the communal resource sharing, the organized emergency response systems. What struck Yentris most was the atmosphere. People worked together without apparent hierarchy. Veterans and civilians, military and non-military, all contributing according to their abilities. Children played safely while adults maintained watch without being obvious about it. The settlement felt peaceful but never vulnerable. During lunch in the community hall, Yentris asked the question that had been bothering him. Administrator Bate, I must ask, your settlement includes many former military personnel. Does this not create tension? We have observed other colonies where warrior cultures clash with peaceful civilian populations. Bate finished her meal before responding. Ambassador, I think you misunderstand what human military service means. We do not have a warrior culture. We have a service culture. People join the military to protect others, not to seek glory or violence. When we retire, we are still the same people who wanted to help and protect. We just do it differently. Grace added from across the table, I spent 20 years as a Navy corpsman. I healed people then, I heal people now. The uniform changed, the purpose did not. Patrick spoke up. I used artillery to protect civilians from threats. Now I teach children mathematics so they can build better futures. Same goal, different tools. Yentris considered this carefully. So military training for humans is about protection and service, not combat and conquest. Roy nodded. Combat is the method, protection is the purpose. When we do not need the method anymore, we are happy to put it aside, but we remember it in case we need it again. The delegation spent 2 more days on New Edmonton, interviewing settlers and observing daily life. They found a community built on cooperation, mutual support, and practical competence. The military background of many settlers provided useful skills for frontier challenges, but did not dominate the culture. Before departing, Yentris met with Bate one final time. Your settlement is remarkable. The council will recommend New Edmonton as a model for frontier development. You have proven that Terran civilians can build peaceful, productive communities even in challenging environments. Bate shook his hand. We appreciate the recognition, Ambassador, but we are just doing what humans have always done, working together to build something better than what we had before. The council delegation departed, carrying detailed reports about New Edmonton's success. Those reports would influence council policy on frontier settlements for decades to come. That evening, Bate sat on her porch with Roy, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Their farm stretched before them, crops growing strong, livestock healthy in their pens. In the distance, other farms showed lights coming on as families gathered for dinner. Think the ambassador understood? Roy asked. Bate considered the question. Maybe. Or maybe he will keep wondering how warriors can be farmers. Some species never quite grasp that we are both because we choose to be both. Does it matter if they understand? Not really. We know who we are, we know what we are building. That is enough. Roy agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their world grow dark as New Edmonton's 2 small moons rose over the horizon. Across the galaxy, other Terran colonies grew and thrived. Other retired veterans planted crops and raised families. Other communities built peaceful lives while remembering how to protect those lives if necessary. The pattern repeated on dozens of worlds, proving the same lesson over and over. Humans could be warriors when needed. Humans could be farmers when wanted. The two were not contradictory because humans understood something fundamental that many species struggled to grasp. Peace was not the absence of capability for violence. Peace was the choice to use that capability for protection instead of conquest, for building instead of destroying, for growing instead of taking. Bate and Roy went inside as full darkness fell. Tomorrow they would wake early and work the farm. They would help neighbors with repairs. They would teach children about sustainable agriculture. They would live the peaceful lives they had fought to make possible. And if trouble came again, if someone threatened their community or their way of life, they would remember their training and do what needed to be done. Then they would go back to farming, because that was who they chose to be. The Prairie Wind incident became a teaching example in Terran military academies and council diplomatic schools. Two groups learning the same lesson from different perspectives. Terrans learned that their reputation protected their civilians even in the darkest corners of space. The Council learned that Deathworlder civilians were still Deathworlders, capable and dangerous when threatened, but preferring peace when given the choice. 1 year after landing on New Edmonton, 17 colonists had become a community of hundreds. The farms produced surplus food. The settlement exported agricultural products to other colonies. Children grew up learning both how to grow crops and how to protect what they grew. Bate looked at what they had built and felt satisfied. This was why she had served. This was what she had protected. And now she lived it every day, surrounded by people who understood the same truth. Peace was worth fighting for, and once won, peace was worth living fully.